Hello, my friends. Today is a very special day for me, a very unique day. Today is my death day anniversary. Today, 5 years ago, I died. This is a true story, what I went through on my death day and the following 10 days. So, if you're interested in that, just stay tuned and let me share my story with you. I woke up one morning, went into the living room to watch TV as always. Get something to eat, get something to drink. And the last thing I remember is sitting down on the couch and taking a nap. I know on the calendar that I was in a coma for only 10 days. But my coma lasted months, if not a year. And like I've said, if you're a little squeamish, you may not want to be listening to my story. The next thing I remember was becoming aware that I was in what going to call a body wash bag, a wash bag. It was very, very similar to a body bag, traditional black body bag. Mine was very much different because it was opaque, it was clear, but it was really thick material, maybe 10 mils thick. It had a injection port where they connected a hose to by my face and another one down my feet for drainage. And I couldn't move, was never able to move during the months and months of torture. Was never able to move. What I could do was see out of one eye. And as I looked around, I was in a facility that was a round room, maybe 12 to 15 layers high, with about 30 drawers like the one I was in. And there was a center table, or a table in the center of the room, a stainless steel one, and hoses dropping down from the ceiling. And what would happen was the room was basically for body storage. So the attendants, or the processors, I call them processors, the processor would take a body out of a drawer, put them out on the table, stick the connecting hose to the input port, and you'd be flushed with this very thick liquid, clear liquid, once again, but kind of thick like, motor oil, but clear. And this would go on, and then you'd go back in your drawer. And this is what the processors did. They processed us. They were preserving us, I guess. All I could do is observe this looking through a blurry eye because of the liquid that was always on the goop that was always on your face. A few days after being in this room, I don't know, it was my fifth, my sixth time, I don't know. I was brought onto the table, and each time I would fight and think in my head, how can I get the attention of this person so they understand that I'm not dead? I couldn't move. I couldn't vocalize. I was immobilized. I was dead, but I wasn't dead. And the processor, I'm going to call him processor number one, junior processor. I guess he recognized that my eye was opened. And it seemed to freak him out and make him confused, which I could relate to. He went and got another processor to come for a second opinion, I guess. I couldn't understand the language, but I could pick up and understand enough that they were debating what to do. Processor one was basically saying, this isn't right, something's wrong here. Our dead body here, is opening his eye. Processor number two is basically telling processor number one, it doesn't matter, his body's been bought and paid for, we have him sold, so he's our property, he's dead. During these events was the first time I was murdered. As processor number one, I guess, went to go find more help or, somebody to hire up on the food chain. Processor number two decided, since I was bought and paid for, that he would just make sure there was no question. So he moved the injection port of the bag directly over my mouth and attempted to murder me, injecting the liquid directly and drowning me. The actions of processor two of shoving the hose directly over and trying to drown me was extremely painful. I still couldn't move, of course. I was still dead, I guess, but alive. This torture went on for hours. Processor number two seemed bound and determined to resolve the issue of whether I'm dead or alive himself. At some point, another gentleman came in the room, or actually it was 3 gentlemen that came in the room. They were debating whether I need further study or they needed to continue to try to murder me. I guess luckily for me, they decided that I needed to be further studied why there was life or movement in my eye or consciousness in my eye. So the attempt to murder me at this point was stopped. And this is when I started to figure out where I was. But I finally figured out that I was in India, of all places. And my fractionally corpse was brought in front of what you would typically see or think of as a Indian guru from like the 70s. Wearing the white pants, shirtless, sitting Indian style, with a long beard. I had consciousness in my brain, but I couldn't do anything but see, and that was I could barely see. He was going to decide my fate. So here I am in front of the Indian guru, and without us using vocal words, he let me know and explain that I died back in the United States and my body was sold or donated for medical research. And since what they bought was a dead body, and they don't buy humans. They don't buy live humans. They buy dead bodies. From his perspective, I was their property. They bought me. They had a customer lined up in Mexico. And I knew I had to convince him that I wasn't a dead body, that I had rights, that they couldn't own me. They couldn't sell me. It would be murder, which they already tried to do, to chop me up for medical research. This process went on for days. Now, let me say, in all fairness, our Indian guru was a very nice man. So the decision, or the final decision, rested with our Indian guru friend. His opinion, his decision basically was, I have no opinion on whether you're alive or dead. That's too deep of a philosophical question to be answered at this point. You have already been sold to a processing facility in Mexico. So therefore, we're going to basically send you to Mexico. And you can take your argument up in Mexico. I wound up in Mexico. I don't know how I got there. Processed and transferred. When I got there, I was washed again, processed again. And then I was presented in front of and you guys might find this one kind of funny, a gentleman that reminded me of the most interesting man in the world from the Del Secchi beer commercials. That was out a few years back. Guy looked just like him. A very wise, and it would now become his responsibility, his duty, his task to figure out what to do with me. And I would be forced to make the same argument again. One part of me was very encouraged at the thought that I was in Mexico. Just one country away from the United States. I thought if I could make my argument well enough, this was my best chance. But I was able to convince them that maybe I was alive. So to put that to the test, they decided to kill me. I was murdered yet again for the second time. I guess the theory was they could only kill somebody that was alive. So I was murdered. The next thing I knew, I was basically in a all-white 10 by 10 hospital room-like place. Very clean, very modern looking. Everything was stark white. The walls were like hard plastic so that you could scrub it down easily. I was in some type of hospital bed. The interesting thing about this room was it was very bright, very white. And as I lay there, I realized that I am in a three-dimensional light grid. So take a 10 by 10 room and take little bright colored LED lights or laser pinpoint lights and put them into 1 foot cubes that fill up the entire room. So that's what it was, 1 foot cubes and lights at each connecting points. And then there's a little light beam going from light to light, and these cubes are everywhere. The entire room, the entire 10 by 10 room, 100 square feet. If I moved the one eye that I could move, because remember, I was still unable to do anything, I would break one of the light streams. And the laser points where the grid's connected would explode into an extremely bright, hotter than the sun brightness, white light that would not only hurt, but would disorient and blind me. Just a brilliant pow of light. Then what would happen is a little coin, like a dime, a nickel, a dollar coin, would burst out of it and float up in the air, twirling as it went up to the ceiling. I don't know what that was all about. At the time, I guess I thought maybe it was going towards my bill. If I was able to buy my way out, then that would be every time one of those burst, I got charged. Because there was questions about, or my concern about, how could I buy my way home? But I had no money, no resources, no way to make a phone call, of course, no way to ask for help. So this went on, and I was in this room for a long time. As time went on, I was able to communicate with the most interesting man in the world in hopes of talking my way into freedom or communicating, because I wasn't able to talk, my way into freedom that I'd spent my entire career in safety and health trying to advocate for minority workers, at times doing it for absolutely free, helping the government with guidelines and programs to support worker rights, no matter whether the workers were illegals or not. That it was important to me in my career and the people that I worked with that nobody dies for a paycheck, that temp workers are respected, the minority workers were respected, taken care of, looked after, teaching and training companies that they had the duty to protect their workers no matter who they were, what they looked like. We're all humans, we're all treated equally. They had to do this by US law, and it was morally and ethically the right things to do. I explained to them that over the years, the number of worker deaths in the state of Arkansas, where I was from, had gone down into the low 20s versus the high 30s and low 40s because of a collective effort, which means that in return, the people of his country were better off because of what I was involved in my career. I apologize wholeheartedly, but not being able to save everybody. That I wasn't able to change the world and prevent people from dying just because they want a paycheck, which is horrifying to think that this still happens in today's age. The next thing I know is I'm in the desert in Mexico. I'm no longer in the facility. I'm no longer surrounded by anybody. I am literally on my own, floating in the desert. It was hot, extremely hot. It was painful. I could feel every grain of sand on my skin, but I knew I had to try to figure out how to get across the border, how to make it home. And at some point, I was able to cross the border. And I came across in the Texas deserts and found what I call the Red People. The Red People had an event going on that was like it was a Red Bull X Games event out in the middle of the desert in Texas. So, huge stadium, lots and lots of people, motorcycles, dune buggies, the whole 9 yards, all of that craziness that goes along with an X Games type event. And Red Bull was the sponsor. But this is very different. Everything was red tints, red hues. Even the sand had a redness to it. I didn't get a good feeling from this. But as I made my way through, I approached the person that I thought was in charge. Looked like he was in charge. You know, most people consider me a tough guy. You know, I don't get scared. You can't intimidate me. I won't be bullied. That's always been my personality. And I'm thankful for those traits. I like those things about me. I approached this gentleman and I asked him, I said, is there a phone I can use and where's the nearest town? Because I knew if I could just get a phone call in, if I could just call somebody back in the United States, if I could just call Lorelei and tell her I'm alive, I'm in wherever, come and get me, send help. If I could just do that, but I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. But I so badly wanted to. So I asked him for a phone, asked him about the nearest town, and he said, boy, just ain't that simple. You have dues to pay and hell to live through. And that's when another living hell started for me. In hopes of getting that phone call, getting help and assistance from these demonic people, I was forced to do every type of work at the X Games. I literally, one of the worst jobs was I gave out ice cold water to people, but I wasn't allowed to have any. I had to rake up their human shit out of the sands and clean it, do the trash, clean the motorcycles, pick up the garbage, everything you can imagine. Wasn't allowed to eat, wasn't allowed to drink. I was literally beaten in the lower back on a regular basis with a pipe. It was their favorite thing to do. And I knew I was dancing with the devil, but there wasn't a lot I could do but fight. And I've never backed down from a fight. And this was a fight. Every day in the heat, the abuse, the psychological torture that these red people put me through. I fought, I prayed, I fought, I prayed, I did the chores in hopes of getting that phone call. It was one of the hardest legs of this journey. It was so bright in that desert, so bright. There was no rest for my eyes, no sleep, just torture and abuse, humiliation, over and over and over. I don't know how long it lasted. One of the hardest and most disturbing things that happened to me in the desert at the X Games event was I had to keep the fires lit. Why we had fires in the middle of the desert when it never got dark, I don't know. But I had to keep the fires lit. They were extremely hot. And when competitors or people in the audience would die, the red people, they were all red people, red eyes, red skin, red tint to everything. When they died from an accident or whatever happened to them, I had to burn their bodies in the fires. That's what kept the fires so hot, was their bodies. I would take their bodies and place them in the fires, and the heat would just intensify. And the smell, oh my God, the smells was just unbelievable. After months of suffering, humiliation, and torture, abuse, they beat me. The red people beat me. They wore me down. They won. They broke me to the point where I had no hope at all. I knew that I was never going to get to go home, that if this was hell, this is my new place. I didn't know what it was. They beat me down. I gave up and died. Not proud to say it, ashamed of it, but I gave up and died. So I was in another body processing area, room, facility, whatever you want to call it. This one was different. This room, I was on a table in this processing room. And as I looked around, I could tell that it was very morgue-like, like a morgue you would see in the United States on TV. Walls of these little 2 foot by 2 foot metal doors where they slide the bodies in and out on the metal trays. That's what this room was, very clinical. I don't know how many there was, 20 to 100, I don't know, but it was a very big room, a very big processing room. Now, one of the interesting things that you guys might find this is kind of funny. In the United States here, we had a TV show of a doctor called Dr. Poole. He's a veterinary clinic. He's a really nice looking 80-year-old man, very happy, smiles a lot, loves people, loves animals. And he was there. His name wasn't Dr. Poole, but the guy looked like him, a guy that reminded me of him. he would repeatedly come over and check on me, and with his trademark big smile, he would say, "Yep, he still did." And I would get that notification, every few minutes that I was still dead. The good thing that came about this, I realized that I know that I'm back in the United States now. I don't know where, probably Texas, since I was in Mexico. But I'm back in the United States. And how did I know this? Because he speaks very good English, perfect English, just American English. So that made me very hopeful. But while being in this room, so let me see if I can describe the room for you a little bit better. So like I said, there's these banks of walls that has these 2 foot by 2 foot drawers that I'm assuming dead bodies were in. But there were also rooms where there were live humans, like in hospital rooms, like ICU ward. And as I laid on the table, I could look over. Remember, I can't move, I can't communicate, but you can see things. And over across the way, maybe 15 to 20, 25 feet away, 30 feet, I don't know, there was a heavyset lady with black curly hair screaming at the top of her lungs about the agony and pain she was in. And this went on for hours and days, I don't know. She kept telling them, "There's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with me." And doctors would tell her, "No, there's not. You're perfectly healthy, you're fine." And she's like, "No, there's something," it went on, and the screams, the begging for help, the pleading for somebody to help her. It was extremely disturbing. Her caterwauling, her crying, her just begging for help, and people just saying, "Nah, there's nothing wrong with you. Don't worry about it." They decided to give her some medicine to make her go to the bathroom. They thought she had a blockage, or she was constipated, I guess. I don't know. So they give her the medicine, and the screams continue. The praying continues. "Lord, help me. Lord, save me. They're killing me. It hurts. It hurts." And the medicine, I guess, forced the issue. And at some point on her bed, she pushed, I guess, or it came out of her body. It split her open like this. Her intestines spilled out everywhere. One leg went this way, one leg went this way. Blood and guts, shit everywhere. There had apparently been a large mass inside of her, about the size of a soccer ball, small soccer ball. Looked like a ball of coconut. So if you took coconut strands and you just tightened up like this, it was like that, kind of hairy-ish looking. But it split her open. Killed her, of course. The blood, the screams, the guts that I saw, the terror on that poor lady as this happened, because I watched it happen. Nobody would help. And then hospital personnel came into the room, made sure they didn't get their shoes all bloodied or human shit on them, stepping around her entrails that were all over the bed, the floor, the walls. Because when this came out of her, folks, you got to realize the screaming, and she would just literally split open, and all of this came out. Things are starting to get hazy for me, a little blurry for me. I didn't have the great clarity ever, but what little clarity I had was starting to slip. Things are getting fuzzy. People were beating on my chest, and I didn't understand that. I'm already dead. Why are you beating on me? So I had people beating on my chest, yelling at me, asking me questions. This was horrifying. I thought was was going away. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I was hallucinating. I thought things were getting worse. And the despair that came in because I fought so hard and I fought so long to prove that I was alive, to find my way back home, and to be killed again. Then, of course, remember, I was already shipped once to become medical research to India. So to lose all that ground that I made proving that I wasn't dead was devastating. Absolutely devastating. It broke my heart, and I died again. It's so psychologically disturbing when you know you just give up, when there's nothing more you can do, that you went through hell, beaten, tortured, only to have to give up. At this point, I woke. I woke up. I didn't know I was awake. It took a while. And let me tell you, folks, I was one pissed off mother. My brain truly was Swiss cheese. I couldn't tell what was real, what wasn't real, what was happening, what wasn't happening. I had no understanding of what happened. Because remember, I simply lay down on the couch to take a nap. And then I was murdered twice, 3 times, tortured, beaten, humiliated for months. Had to fight and argue my way back. I was extremely pissed that people were hitting me. Because, not being able to defend myself has been one of the hardest things I've had to do. And I wasn't able to defend myself. If I could have, none of this would have happened. But I wasn't able to defend myself. And I thought I was in the morgue. And that pissed me off. And I didn't want to be in a morgue again. Another freaking room of dead bodies. Another round of torture. I didn't want to do it. It was just such a stressful and confusing time. I couldn't move after I woke. My muscles, I lost control of my muscles. I couldn't even move my arms, my hands. And there was people around me, a lot of them just asking me questions, which just pissed me off more. Why the hell are you asking me questions? Why don't you help me? Take your stupid questions and shove them. It really pissed me off. And one of the people turned out or reminded me of my wife. That was helpful. But she didn't look the same, I'll tell you. She didn't look the same. I thought she was an alien. I thought Lorelei was not an illegal alien, but a space alien. And I understand now it's because she probably looked sickly from being there all this time. But in my mind, she was an alien. I didn't trust her. This confusion went on for several days. A lot of questions was asked. Lorelei would try to show me pictures of things, and I interpreted them totally wrong. I was moved to a rehab center to learn how to walk again, how to move my muscles and get exercise. And I know that if I have it my way, I would never go through another coma. I know a lot of people think that people in comas don't experience anything. Well, I don't know about everybody. I just know about me.